Hello friends, in this video I'm going to teach you how to use Stable Diffusion. Now if you need to install Stable Diffusion, you need to check my previous video up here where I go through every step of the installation, what extensions to install, and how to install your very first model, all in preparation for this guide here. So let's get started, and I'm going to show you how to create some amazing generative AI art. In my opinion, Stable Diffusion is the king of generative AI art. Let's get started. By the way, do you know what happens when doctors get frustrated? They lose their patience, of course. Now, this is the first thing you will see after launching Stable Diffusion. And if this looks confusing, don't worry. I'm using dark mode in my browser, so I'm having a dark background here. If yours is white, don't worry, that is just your browser settings and can be changed. The first thing you will see up here is the Stable Diffusion checkpoint. That is your model, and if you follow my previous video, you will probably have something installed here or multiples. You can choose which model to use by selecting the drop down here. Now these models are what is referred as the model numbers of Stable Diffusion. You might have a 1.5, a 2.0, 2.1, etc. This will be the Stable Diffusion model. The user interface that we're using here, Automatic1111, is not the Stable Diffusion version. Don't confuse the two. Now, in your version, you will probably not have these three here, the VAE, the LoRa, and the Hyper Network. For this tutorial, you will not need them. However, if you want to install them, as I get this question a lot, you're going to need to go into Settings, you're going to go into User Interface here, and then scroll down, Info here, Quick Settings List. Here you can select what you will see in the top bar. There are lots of settings to choose from. And I have the VAE, the LoRa, and the Hyper Network. But we're not going to cover those in this guide as you will not need them for now. You're only going to need the checkpoint here. But remember, if you're downloading LoRa's or VAEs, you can add them up here and just select them easily here. Now, the first tab here, Text to Image. That will be your main tool of generating images in Stable Diffusion. You have two boxes, one positive prompt here and one negative prompt box here. And the first prompt here, this is where you're going to select what you want. So let's say we have puppy dog, and let's say you don't want a cat. This would be the most simplistic way of generating an image. Now this won't be a particularly great image. I'm just going to press generate here to show you. And I mean, it's a puppy dog. It's okay. Nothing special. Where Stable Diffusion starts to shine is first having a good checkpoint. I'm currently using the deliberate model. So that is a custom checkpoint. Then you can find a site like Civit AI or similar. Again, follow my previous guide for how to install those. Now we're going to add some styles, and these styles can be found in the video description, and they are made by me and the people of my community, in Discord community. We're going to choose the default negative and the digital oil painting. If you want to see how these interact with the prompt here, you can press this little button, apply selected styles to current prompt, and you will see the text here. Now I'm just going to remove that because I don't want that to mess it up. If you have them selected here on the right side, they are still applied to the image without you seeing them in the prompt. So the easiest way is to have them here and just type what you want, puppy dog. And now if we generate something, we will have a large negative prompt here to help with our image. And our puppy dog here is a little better than our first image. Now, there are a lot of settings to use in Stable Diffusion. Now, while this image is very good for not having changed much at all, you're going to want to learn how to change some of the more advanced settings. So let's look at what's available here. So the first settings we're going to have a look at here are the sampling method here and the sampling steps. The sampling method are a lot of tools that you can choose from, or a lot of samplers that takes your prompt and your model and turns that into an image in a set amount of steps. The steps you can see on the right side here. And let me show you a couple of examples here that I've put together. So here on the top, let me zoom in a little bit for you. Here on the top are the steps count. So an image goes through steps like frames of a video. In this example, to the right, we have 15 steps to a complete image. On the first line here, you can see the first step is just a bunch of noise. So the sampler is trying to get this noise and turn that into an image. And in each step or each iteration or frame of the image, it gets a little better. So every iteration, every step forward, the image gets a little better. Now there's a diminishing returns to this. So putting it at 100 steps or 1,000 steps, whatever, is not going to make it better each step. But we'll get to how many steps you need in a little bit. This is just to show you what happens as the sampler goes through these steps to create an image. Now, this is just an example with 2 samplers. We're going to look at a few more in a bit. But just remember that Stable Diffusion goes from noise and one step at a time tries to create your image. Now, there are a lot of samplers, and looking at this list, you might think, oh, what am I going to choose? And I will tell you this. But first, let me show you a quick comparison of what's going on. So what we have here are, on the left axis, we have all the samplers. And on the top axis, we have steps. So it's a step of 5, 10, 15, 20, etc., up to 50 steps. And there are 2 sets of samplers, like 2 main sets. One, something called convergent, and one are not. So if we're looking at the top one here, the Euler A, you can see that the starting image is far from the ending image. It's a different dog. So that means that this sampler is not convergent. It converges into something else. Each step it can drastically change. Now the Euler A is a very popular sampler because it produces, as you can see, good images in low step counts and is particularly fast. While some of the other samplers here, you can see that the first image is more similar to the last image here. That means they're converging on the same path towards the same image. Now, does that make any difference? It makes a difference if you're trying to recreate or have consistency in your images. If you're just trying to create good images and don't really care about consistency, well, no, then it doesn't matter. But it's good for you to know what's going on under the hood. Now, I've been using Euler A for a very long time because it is fast. But what I would recommend you to use nowadays is something called the DPM++2M Keras, which is a newer model, and it is converging towards the same image, and it's also pretty fast. As you can see here, this is 15 steps. At around 15 steps, it starts producing good images. 5 steps, 10 steps, not great, but here at 15, it starts producing great images. So if you're just looking for a quick answer, use DPM++2M Keras at between 15 to 25 steps. Now, as you can see, there are samplers like DDIM here, 10 steps produce a good result. And as well, the first one that we looked at, the Euler A, can produce good images even at lower step counts. So play around with them, but I'd recommend going for Euler A or the DPM++2M Keras. Now, you might see that some of these are getting quite weird results, like the artifacts and the coloring here in the dog. And that's because some samplers are not great at, firstly, low step counts, and secondly, high CFG scales. And you might be scratching your head, what is a CFG scale? Now, this is advanced stuff, Seb. Well, let me quickly show you. There's a slider down here called the CFG scale. And that's a slider here that goes from 1 to 30. And that is how much Stable Diffusion will listen to your prompt. So if you set this high, it will try to force your prompt as much as possible, but it also might break your image. And if you set this low, it will be more creative. It might not, it'll see your prompt and be like, yeah, whatever. I'll do something. Maybe it's a dog, but it might not be a puppy. Maybe it's a, whatever. It'll do their thing, but get more consistent of an image. And here's a quick test to show you the CFG scale. And you can see it's very clear on the Euler A and the LMS sampler. Here on the Euler A, you can see the first images. Well, it's still a dog, but it's completely different to what we tried to achieve. And in the LMS sampler, the first image is kind of weird. And then it starts breaking down as CFG scale goes up. So I would recommend setting CFG at around 3 to 7, depending on what model you're using. If you just want to, set and forget it, 5, 6, 7. So following that advice, we're going to change our sampling method to DPM++ 2mcaris. We set sampling steps between 15 and 25. We're just going to set it to 20 for now. And we're going to set a CFG scale to, we said between 5 and 7. So let's set it at 5 for now. Now the width and height here, that's basically just the size of your image. For most models, 512 by 512 is the default size. There are some models trained on 768 by 768, but try to use your first pass as close to this size as possible, because that will generate the most consistent results. Now a quick example, if we make this 1024 by 512, we will get a wide image, as you can see with our dog here. If you followed my previous guide in installing it, you will also have the aspect ratio calculator down here. So you can quickly set different aspect ratios. And that will follow here. If you change the height here, press 3x2, we'll change the width as well. We're resetting this to 512 by 512. The batch count and the batch size will be how many images and how many batches you're creating. I usually use the batch count for more images because that doesn't affect your VRAM. Now the batch size will have more images in a batch. So let's say I create 4 images in a batch count here. That will mean I create 4 batches with 1 image each. And if I create 1 batch with 4 images, your GPU will have time to ramp up and get up to speed. So it will be faster, but at the cost of higher VRAM. As Stable Diffusion is most of the time very GPU heavy, that's why I use the batch count higher. But it's a matter of preference and you're dependent on your hardware. If you're not sure, just change the batch count if you want more images. Now the restore phases here, that has been a setting that was previously used a lot in Stable Diffusion. I don't recommend using this anymore. It will smooth out people's faces. I much prefer that you will inpaint the faces, and have a very long and quite extensive guide on inpainting that you can see up in the top right corner. Now, if you want to delve deep into that, here's a quick word from this video sponsor, Run Diffusion. But hold on, don't skip yet. This might actually be useful to you. And for letting me show you this, I'm going to provide you with a dad joke at the end. Run Diffusion promises Stable Diffusion in 90 seconds. And what it actually is, it's Automatic1111 in the cloud. And starting from 50 cents an hour. Now, the good part about cloud-based solutions is you don't need a GPU of your own. You can use it on any old laptop or computer that you got hanging around. Get started for as little as $5 and then pay 50 cents an hour. In an hour, on the smallest server, you can actually do up to 1,000 images. So it's very cheap unless you're a power user of Stable Diffusion and really need your own hardware. It's also very easy to get started with and set up. And it's basically a clone of the same install that we did and are following in this guide here. Now, if you want to use your custom models, embeddings, and LoRa's, or do Dream Booth training, you can join something called Creators Club. It will also give you a lot of storage to use, and they have an integrated file browser where you can see all the files and save the models that you are using. Create animations in the forum as it is preloaded on all the servers. They manage the hardware and install everything for you. You just sit back and start using Stable Diffusion. Both Automatic1111 and Invoke AI are available as of today. You also have a great community in Discord to help you get started and help you if you have any issues. I promised you a dad joke, so when does it rain money? When there is change in the weather. Now, the Hiresfix, there are, I would say, 2 recommended workflows into getting good quality images. Hiresfix is one of them, because if you're doing 512 by 512 images, you will get okay images, but they're low resolution and not very detailed. One way to fix that is to press this little Hiresfix button. That means it will first generate 1 pass of an image in your set resolution, which is here 512 by 512, and then it will generate again by a factor of this upscale. So now we're upscaling by 2. So it says here, resize from 512 by 512 to 1024 by 1024. So let's quickly try that. So now it generates 1 image, a smaller one, and from that image generates a bigger one, adding more detail. You will not see the first and the second, you will see the end result here. But this has much more detail than the low resolution one. The second workflow of this is that as this takes longer to generate than just a 512 by 512 image, what I usually do is, let's say I do 4 images here. And when I've found a composition that I like, because everything is random, right? If I use Hiresfix, I'm getting a lot of good images, but they're going to take a lot of my time. So first I'm doing a low resolution pass with a lot of images, and let's say, okay, I like this image. And then instead of using the Hiresfix, I take this fast generate image and I send this to image, and here I can set 1024 by 1024 instead. And this will do the exact same thing, basically, as using Hiresfix, but it will give me more control and be faster in the long run if I want to find a composition that I like. Might be a little tricky here in the beginning, but you'll get a hang of it. We'll dive deeper into image to image in a bit. Now heading back into our text to image here with our puppy dog, we are going to keep looking in the settings here. And here's something that's called a seed. And this -1 means it will be random. And what this does is it gives us a random noise to start the image with, and then it, well, turns into this. So let's say I want to recreate this, then I can push the little green button here, which will save that seed. Now, if I press the generate button here and generate again with exactly the same settings and exactly the same seed, I will get exactly the same image. So this is a way that you can adapt an image. So you can play with the values and see how it changes your image. Because if you play with the values and have a different seed each time, you might not know what the differences are because your seed is random anyway. But if you want a new image each time, you will have to have this at -1 or press the little dice here, which will randomize your seed. Now further down here, you have ControlNet, which we installed in the previous video. In-depth guides on ControlNet, which you can find in, well, a ControlNet playlist on my channel. But basically what this does is you drop an image here and then you can enable this and then you can recreate something from this image. So let's say I set this to depth here. And now if I generate puppy dog here, let's say I'm going to generate 4 images. We have a random seed. So we should get 4 different images, right? Well, with ControlNet, you're actually reading from this image and we will get 4 similar images of this post. Now we might get different colors, different dogs, but we will get likenesses of this image depending on what preprocessor and model you use. Now, I'm not going to delve into this in detail as I have more comprehensive guides on that, so find them on my channel. But as you can see here, we have 4 dogs that are similar in composition. So this was a run through of text to image. And if you followed every step here, you're going to be well on your way to create a good image, or at least an image that you can improve on. Now let's move into the image to image tab. If we drop our image here, or if you go into text to image and you have an image selected and press send to image, you will get that. Let's take this one, for example, here. Sending that to image, that will send that in with the prompt that you used, which was puppy dog. Now, bear in mind that if you didn't apply the styles, they will not be sent. So you're going to have to go in here again, press default negative and digital oil painting. You can find these in the video description. We're going to change this back into DPM++ 2M Keras, and we're having, again, 20 steps. Now, image to image means that you will take from this image and create a new image. And most of the time, you will use this to create from a low resolution image to a high resolution image. You can also use it just to keep the colors or composition of an image. It will not keep the composition as well as ControlNet, but it will keep the colors of an image. Let me quickly show you here. Let's use the same resolution for now. And let's use batch count 4 and just lower this. We're going to check this in a bit. I'm just going to show you what's going on here. So now it's generating 4 new images off of this old one. And they will not differ much. As you can see here, they're fairly similar, but it takes from the colors of this one here and applies it to a new image. Now what we want to do is we want to increase this. So let's put the double size in 1024 by 1024, and we'll just use one image for now. And then in image to image, you have something called the denoising strength. And that's a slider from 0 to 1, which is basically, you could think of it as 0% to 100%. It's not exactly that, but it's good thinking like that. So let's say you set this at 0. This will not change your image at all. And as you can see in the example, that's exactly what's happening. You're having basically the same image in the left and the right. So this is not something that we will be using. Let's set this to denoising 1. So if we generate this at 1 denoising, our left image will be completely changed and will not retain basically anything from the left image, making our input practically useless. Now we just have, as you can see, it's not fully rendered yet, but we have a weird looking dog and another dog here with some sort of glasses. So our result here is completely different. And this again isn't something that we're looking for in image to image. Then we can just use text to image. Now, what we want to do is keep some of this. And I would recommend having a setting between 0.4 and, well, up to maybe 0.75 if you're just starting out. I'm using usually 0.6 if we want to keep this, but add detail and expect some changes. Let me show you. I'm now rendering 2 new images in 0.6 denoising at 1024 by 1024. And as you can see, we are retaining a lot from the left side. However, we are introducing some changes to the image. But as these are high resolution images, we are getting more detail. So this is double the size. And this is basically what happens in Hiresfix, the thing we looked at here. But we're just doing it manually to have more control on the input composition. Now, if you feel that these changes are too much compared to your input on the left here, you're going to want to lower the denoising to about 0.4. This setting will still introduce enough noise that the new image will have more detail than the left, but it will not introduce as much of a difference. So let's run this again at 0.4 at 1024 times 1024. So now we have a dog on the right here that is eerily similar to the one on the left. However, it will be more detailed. So this is a 1024 by 1024 image. So at double the resolution, well, depending on how you count, you will have a higher resolution image with less changes. So whenever you work with image to image, remember here the denoising strength. That's the most important part. The higher this value, the more the image will change. And again, if you're just starting out, try between 0.4 and 0.6. And if you're looking for more changes, go higher. Now, let's say you have an image that you're fairly happy with, but you have something that doesn't feel right. You might want to change this thing on the color here. So what you can do is you can take this and just press the little button here, send to Inpaint. Again, I have a very detailed tutorial on inpainting. So we're just going to go through it very quickly here. But here you can change parts of the image by drawing. So let's say you want to generate this little piece here. We're going to change it into heart. Let's make glowing heart instead. I'm going to keep this Inpaint masked. We want to mask content original because we're keep what it says here, keep whatever was there originally. So was behind there. If you want to introduce something new, you want to change that to latent noise. And we're changing in the Inpaint area to only masked, which will give us a higher resolution. Then we'll just take this part here. It will zoom in. If we use the whole picture, it will render in the same resolution, given this part, less detail, or well, actually the same detail. But if you use only masked, we'll get more details in this image. We're upping the denoising so we can get some changes into this, and we are generating 2 images. And now we will see this will zoom in here and giving us more detail actually on this part than anywhere else in the image. So this is a good way to 1, fix images, and 2, improve on images and give them more detail where needed. And as you can see here, if you remove first our paint on the left here, you can see the comparison that the right one here is sharper and more detailed than the left. We can also see that if we check in detail here. Now, if you feel that you're done with your image, you can send this to something called extras down here. And this is where you upscale an image. So here you have a scale by or a scale to. So you can either scale to a specific size or easier, just scale by. So let's say we want this twice the size from 1024. which will be 2048 by 2048. And then you can select an upscaler. Now on the upscaler one setting here, you have a multitude of options. Now I have a couple that you don't have, which is the 4x ultra sharp and the 4x NMKD CX200K. Now I used NMKD CX200K a lot, so I'm going to try and link that in the video description. So I recommend that you use that if you can. If you don't want that and just want something out of the box, you can try our ESRGAN or our ESRGAN for anime. So basically, we're going to use the regular one here now, and we're resizing that up 2 times. Now, again, this will not give you more detail in the image. You're going to use Hiresfix or image to image for that. There is a way to upscale to high resolution, super high resolution images with upscaling, and that is with tile upscales. I have a separate video on that, so you can check that in the top right corner now. That will get you to create like 8K images on a fairly simple GPU. Now here's our 2048 by 2048 image, and it's fairly okay. But for a first run without changing the settings at all, it's fairly okay, I would say. You could try that, for example, with the anime one, because this is a little bit of a painterly image, so you can see how that changes. And here we have a more smoothed out result. So it's all depending on what you're looking for. Now the fourth tab here, Png Info. Here you can take a previously generated image and drag that in, and if you drop that, you will get all the settings that you used for this image. So here is the positive prompt, we have puppy dog, and then our style prompt, you have the negative prompt, and all the settings. So you can just press this button here, text to image, send to text to image, or send to image image. Let's say we send this to text to image. That will take all the settings that you used for that image and send that into text to image. It'll even save the seed for you. So if we just press generate now, you will have that exact image again. So that's a very powerful tool. After this guide, you should be well on your way to create your very first generative AI images and get some good results in the process. If you want to learn more, check some of my other videos. I recommend some of the ControlNet videos or this one here. Keep learning, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one. See ya.